So let's get started. A few things about CSC. As most of you are aware, we are a global boutique firm with most of activities in North America, in Europe, but also other parts of the world like Middle East, part of Asia, Africa, and South America. We have very high and in-depth expertise in various areas of sustainability, like reporting, sustainability strategies, external assurance, social return on investment, carbon footprint. And we are leader in the sustainability education globally. We are very active in 5 continents around the globe in sustainability education, both in physical programs, but also in the online programs. So we are very happy to share with you the research findings about the corporate responsibility and the appropriate reactions of companies towards this pandemic and towards the new reality that we are facing. Let's take a look to the agenda for today. First part of our discussion is going to be the challenges of business during COVID-19, and I'm sure there are many. Consumers' expectations based on recent research, strategies towards corporate responsibility and good practices, opportunities looking ahead to the new reality, but also we're going to be very happy to share with you a new self-assessment online tool we created for you about how ready you are for the next day after COVID-19 crisis. So it's a new tool we have created. It's going to be free to each one of you, and I will be happy to share with you at the end of this webinar. Karen is going to join me in this discussion, and I'm going to cover the first part, and Karen is going to join in a very, very active discussion. So let's get started with more information. As you all know, the pandemic, and according to the World Economic Forum, has created a recession. Already, 170 countries for the first time are moving into a recession. This has never happened before, so this is a new reality around the world. And of course, this recession, we don't know how in depth it's going to be, how extended it's going to be, and how long the whole recession is going to keep. Important challenges are the timely response by the governments. This is very important factor. Demands on healthcare systems, availability to the public of the effective vaccine, and everybody's waiting for that. Limitations on travel and tourism, and of course, changes in social and consumer behaviors over the long term. There are a lot of leaders around the globe, like Bill Gates, that they say that these changes in social and consumer behaviors, they're going to be remain for a long, long time. So it's not going to be just, I would say, behaviors that then we're going to come back to them to the older reality after the pandemic. So this change is probably going to remain for a long time. Karen, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what's happening, Nikos, is we're seeing a lot of the short-term response being so productive that there is this risk of maybe not having the opportunity to think through long-term because of what you've just articulated. The pressures that are coming are going to be long-term impacts. So today, hopefully, will help you understand how to sort of respond or best set up to respond, given we're so much in the moment, there's so much out of our control, and without the absence of proof or a clarity on what we can expect, it really is hard to move organizations forward. So fully agree.
Great. We call it the new reality, and that's a new term, which means that there are doubts if we will be ever return to the reality that we faced before the pandemic. So that's discussions that we have with other leaders around the globe. Most of them, they believe that this is a new reality, And the new reality with less restrictions probably is going to remain for a couple of months or even more than a year. So let's see and what's happening in North America. So in US, only the last 2 weeks, we have 10 million lost of jobs, which is amazing. And today, I believe this is 17 million lost of jobs. And Bank of America has warned that US could see the deepest recession on record, which means that it's more likely that this recession is going to be much more important than the recession that we had back in 1929. But let's see what's also happening in Canada.
Yeah, so just not dissimilarly, since we're dealing with information that changes on a daily basis, even the GDP that is indicated here, the expectation is certainly that they're looking at a growth contracted to be closer to almost 3% in today's calculations. So certainly the stimulus here that has been provided by our federal government is helping, but again, as organizations are exposing where they're most vulnerable, the stimulus packages are being adjusted in real time with significant impacts happening.
The interesting thing, and thank you for your comments, is that these numbers that we just present in this slide are continuously changing. So what we see today, it may be higher a week after or 3 weeks after. So we don't know exactly how deep is going to be this recession, how much unemployment is going to create. So today, that are some important concerns of business, and we talk with our network all around the globe, but mostly in the US and Canada, and I would like to share with you some of these concerns. One of them is that how do we promote our business with responsibility without creating an impression of taking advantage of a situation? This is a very important and very common concern we have seen from many businesses. And another concern is that going forward, how do we innovate and find new ways to deliver services and solutions that are applicable and adaptable to the new reality, as we call it? So these are only two of the many challenges that the business faces today. And of course, we're going to try to cover briefly the first and the second challenge in the next coming minutes.
Yeah, Nikos, and certainly what we're seeing is these questions are coming at a time of such confusion with the speed of information coming so quickly and at a constant change. It really is hard for any organization to take that first step forward in response because of the lack of clarity and this confusion on where to start, because we don't know if tomorrow looks different yet again. So this going forward piece is going to be really super helpful.
Great. So how can an organization demonstrate its responsibility in an appropriate manner? And I would love to hear your thoughts here. So please use our chat, in order to share with us your ideas. What is your perspective? How do you see that an appropriate reaction on behalf of companies and organizations towards the pandemic? And moving to the most important part of this session, which is about the corporate responsibility and what should be initiatives that companies should do reacting appropriately and responsibly to this global crisis that we face today. I can see here some great ideas by leading with an empathetic framework, showing empathy and understanding delays, especially with producers, protect workers. Fantastic. That's fantastic ideas, and I would love to discuss that with you. Support our vulnerable employees, donate. That's great ideas. Let's share some of them in this presentation. But before we talk about reaction, let's talk about expectations. What do consumers expect from responsible business today? So from our research, what we have found out is that most of the consumers, they expect companies to go through strategic and responsible initiatives and use their resources effectively to benefit society and local communities. That's a major expectations from almost all the consumers today. They expect philanthropic actions through direct donations, also offering to the groups that are most in need, and targeted support to the health sector, because we need to provide to the health sector what is lagging today. Also, we expect relevant products and services that address the new conditions that have arisen. And I'm talking about the health conditions and the social isolation that we all face today. Finally, as you very correct shared with us, we expect the labor contracts and employee benefits are treated with sensitivity. That's another and important expectations on behalf of consumers, because it affects all of us. It's not only about a health crisis, it's a social crisis. It has to do about us, it has to do about our families, it has to do about our future.
Yeah, and Nikos, in this time when we're trying to figure out that consumer interaction, when we can't have contact, it really makes that thinking of how do we actually embrace what the consumers are expecting from us when our contact has been so quickly changed from either a real life interaction, or we're just getting up to speed because we're implementing technology that now allows us to reach out to our consumer base. And trying times to be able to hear from our consumers at such a pivotal moment when they have such high expectations of meeting what their needs are today and how it looks so different. And I know you're going to get into the brand in the next slide, and I think it is really important to build your philosophy for your brand at this moment based on what consumers are expecting from you as an organization.
I know we don't have much time, but I got a fantastic comment by one of you, is that they say that in our company, they ask the CSR teams to switch off. Probably we're going to move to a safe mode. CSR is not important. Well, I think that's a big mistake. I think right now is the time where everybody's expecting from the companies to show their leadership on sustainability and divide the companies that were pretending in the past, that those that true society leaders, those that were really going to be the leaders, not only during the pandemic, but also after the pandemic. So this is a great momentum for companies to show their leadership, to show how important corporate responsibility is for them. And we believe that most of these companies are going to remain leaders also in the future. Thank you for this great question. I really appreciate that. But let's see a very recent survey by Endelman. This survey took place almost a few weeks ago in the United States. And what we can see from this survey is that 65% of the consumers indicate that they want to purchase using a brand that responds appropriately to the crisis. This is a fantastic number. 65% is really a very important number and represents, hundreds of millions of consumers. 37% of consumers indicated that they recently started using a new brand that responded more appropriately to the crisis with related, of course, marketing efforts. And 78% of the consumers said that they likely trust an expert or scientist perspective than those of celebrities or social media influencers. So we can see that things are completely changing. So consumers prefer companies and brands that they have an appropriate reaction towards this pandemic.
And Nikos, I'll share that one of Canada's largest companies called Maple Leaf Foods Their CEO has been very upfront and very visible in this time with a huge investment from Maple Leaf on a lot of different levels. And their comment was really interesting because it was sharing that the real focus is on the doing. It's not advertising what we're doing. And I think that's really a powerful motive for all leaders, especially as I'm hearing from those that are attending this webinar today. The spirit and enthusiasm for empathetic leadership at a most vulnerable time, really like hearing and being aware of the societal changes. It's not a time to sort of express your brand as being better. It is about your brand doing better. And I just thought that was a really powerful notion that was shared in the Canadian landscape specifically. But I would also want to just articulate the perspective of having or building trust for your brand and really using evidence or the science behind this as being the authority to what your steps should be taken. And this is why I love to see that it is that type of expertise that is being the influencer today. It is not the celebrity. It is now the new celebrities, our scientists and our researchers.
That's a great comment, Karen. Thank you for sharing this Canadian perspective. But let's take a look to what are the 4 appropriate steps in order to react to this crisis. The first step is show up and do your part. The second part is don't necessarily act alone. Identify other parties or other organizations that are going to work with you and maximize the impact of your donation. The third one, which is really important and relevant to what Karen says, is solve, don't sell. This is not time for aggressive marketing. This is not time for aggressive communication. It's about communicate about your solution. What was your help? And finally, provide communication with facts, emotion, compassion, and more data that you can share with your audience. These are the 4 steps that we strongly suggest for all sustainability professionals and all communication experts to follow in order to communicate their sustainability initiatives. And this is one of the last topics, and as a time for demonstrating corporate responsibility in its true essence. As we all know, the last years, there's more and more discussion about the conscious capitalism, a capitalism that is going to be more balanced, a capitalism that beyond the shareholder rights is going to be also more focused to stakeholder expectations, a capitalism that is going to align the brands with the values and belief systems of the consumers, of employees, and other stakeholder groups. We believe that this time is here, and the pandemic is gonna boost the pressures from different stakeholder groups for more conscious capitalism. And Karen, what is your thoughts about that?
Well, I absolutely couldn't agree more. It really, this time has exposed a lot of vulnerabilities within organizations. And those organizations that weren't values-based, purpose-led, or not consciously making choices to be socially responsible, they're going to be the hardest hit and the hardest able to respond and recover into our next economic forum post-pandemic. And I truly believe that those with this absence will prove that, and we'll just have a difficult time being able to pivot in tomorrow's world.
Yes, that's great. And we strongly believe that during the recovery phase, during and after the pandemic, that climate change and social impact are going to be 2 areas that more and more efforts and concentration is going to take place. We don't believe that climate change and social impact is going to have less interest during and after the crisis. We strongly believe that they're going to have even more interest during and after the crisis. And at least that's the evidence that we have so far.
Yeah, Nico, so you're absolutely right. This is not our last our last major consideration. We are going to be witnessing these types of transformations through the impacts of climate change, through the impact of a potential next pandemic, and through inequality. And this is where I'm seeing comments in the feed about the importance of CSR remaining such a huge strategic element for organizations going forward, because this is not the last that we will see. And this is why a socially responsible or sustainable mindset is best set up to set an organization's path for the future and for resilience. Which I'm happy to take on into the next few slides, is in this time when we are not able to control, in a time when we have such pressures being put upon us, we have seen really some like core actions being taken by organizations in 4 different ways through this pandemic. And it has happened for a couple of reasons. One is that the organization has had this huge potential to mobilize their resources, and that may be money, or in most cases it is people, but also in the ability to think quickly, having this agile ability to be innovative with their institution, the way it's set up, and pivot accordingly. So what do I mean by that? If we look at one of the core responses is those organizations that have maybe changed their production line or halted their production line to create new products or services, or meet the demands of products and services that are required to actually treat patients in the healthcare institutions. So organizations have made this transition to make ventilators instead of automotives at a time when the response is needed. And that's where organizations with that infrastructure has been able to do that. Not every organization can, though. And so what they are able to do is maybe create more of a shared value proposition for this moment in time, where they can maybe shift their production line to be used for the creation of hand sanitizer versus the creation of alcohol in a gin distillery, as an example. So using the same systems that they already have set up, but create a new product in order to meet the front line and support the healthcare workers, or support the those that are interacting with healthcare on those front lines. Another example of sharing that value is organizations that have huge parking lots, as an example, being used to set up ad hoc healthcare institutions or testing centers for COVID. Puts zero risk to the organizational structure, but at a time when something is left empty, utilize that space for the need that is required. Same sort of thing in the tourism space, where hotels have opened up to host individuals that may be quarantined, or host individuals that can't get home but want to remain safe. What we've also seen, though, and probably most often, is this availability or ability for organizations to send a huge investment or contribution to the cause of this pandemic, whatever that means. It can be for the creation of products and services during this time. It can be creation for products and services for the extensions of those that are hugely impacted. In this case, the families, or the food supply, or the homeless that are not necessarily seen as being the most visible in this pandemic, but are certainly at the heart of the impact. I would say children's health as well would be included in that, as well as educational models. So there's been a huge influx in supporting community investment, but also larger organizations, and we'll show you some examples of that, where they've made huge investments to research on the pandemic specifically. And lastly, but I would say, oh, sorry, Nikos, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. I wanted, but I agree with you. I mean, this is a great graph because it shows a holistic perspective on corporate responsibility. It shows that it's not only about donation on healthcare, it's also about supporting healthcare workers. It's also about supporting communities, right? And groups that now they're in a more desperate position than before. And it's also about support the wellness of our employees. So we need to understand that corporate responsibility, it's not only philanthropy or donations. You need to see the whole picture here, and organizations that they want to be responsible, they need to understand this perspective that this infographic shows that in a great way.
Yeah. So just to wrap that, the employee wellness piece is probably the first and foremost impact that is looked at when you are considering how your organization can transition in this space. The resources that you need to leverage in some cases are significant if you're looking at product lines, but also the resources that you need to rely on to maintain or sustain your business from an employee safety and wellness perspective is huge. And this is where that empathetic leadership, a values-based approach is certainly being demonstrated quite successfully. But as much as this is comprehensive, and it does sort of have an ability to be able to be holistic as you consider these 4 different tangents, if you're going to be considering this for your own organization, you should be really mindful of a couple of different things. And one is what is your own economic viability? What are your employees and your innovation in production and operations able to sustain effectively so you're not putting your own organization at risk? And what is that trade-off when you really want to make a commitment to the overall health of today's society? So as you think about what is practical for your organization and relative to your business activities in order to make the efforts for what is needed in today's society, be very mindful of that so you're balancing and protecting your own employee and your own organization. So this is actually a great moment in time for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's a reporting protocol that has been in place for the past almost 5+ years now. And for you that are on this webinar, your organization may already be contributing in a reporting protocol towards the SDGs. But it is certainly a huge opportunity to utilize the UN Sustainable Development Goals if you are considering what it is, what is at stake, but also what's the opportunity for you as an organization to contribute. And here we just have a couple of examples of ways that organizations that we've talked about or shown how they're making impact are actually really making a strong demonstration towards improving the levels of education, as an example. Certainly good health and well-being. As much as we may think we're at a time where the health is at risk, we certainly need to make some huge contributions to that SDG as well. Nikos, you certainly have a lot of experience with reporting protocols. Is there anything you would like to add with this?
Yeah. I would like to add that the number 3 goal about good health and well-being is really, really appropriate right now. And more business should stick to that because it's a goal that really presents the situation and where we stand right now. So I believe that more and more initiatives that are taking place by companies is going to be under the SDG number 3 here, because this is what we needed so far, and that's what we need more and more.
Yeah, and I would just like to jump on that because there's a comment here in the feed that talks about the the economic stimulus that was already in place, but now even more so. The understanding of sustainable development in the original stimuluses that were already put in place, that's not going away. So to utilize the SDGs as a bit of a roadmap for consideration as you're thinking through your organizational advancements through COVID, it certainly will also have to apply to being a sustainable model regardless. That impact of the stimulus is not going away. So what I'm hoping is that people on the call, or sorry, people on the webinar today can see themselves in some of these examples that we're going to take you through. Really, those organizations that are really high level and certainly significant globally, what steps that they've taken to inform those sort of that holistic approach to healthcare and impact to your organization and impact to your employees. And these slides cover all of those different areas. So you certainly have a lot of focus here in some of the text in this tech space about its contribution to employee wages, given that these organizations are most likely to, certainly seeing a spike in their products and services due to COVID. So significant amount of investments that have gone towards either employee wages, employee programs, or longstanding funding for societal impact.
And Karen, I would like to add here another perspective that some companies like Amazon or Zoom gain a huge benefit due to the crisis. So the expectations of the consumers is to do more, to donate more than any other company. So those that they get benefits from the pandemic, like Amazon or Zoom, we consumers, I assume they expect to do more towards corporate responsibility. And that's the expectation game on behalf of the consumers now.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this is where the balance a little bit of making sure that the brand, the conversation that you had earlier, Nikos, the brand communication externally really does need to be sensitive, given the profitability that is there. And we have more examples of this here with the likes of Walmart, who have been very much in the forefront of this conversation, what they are doing at a time where they are peaking as well. And I would say that they have contributed in multiple ways. And Uber and Microsoft, we get a little bit more into Microsoft being in advance of this, and probably the technology was already there, but already putting in place, some tools that can be used to make sure that going forward, points of contact is well understood with their own technology, where they can see mobility, where the risk is at in a public space perspective, so that consumers or the general public will now have access to know if they are at risk or not. So a huge pivot by Microsoft, partnering with Apple, or sorry, my apologies, that's Google, partnering with Apple. My apologies for that. And more considerations is certainly Bill and Melinda Gates have been in the public about this for years previously, just with their involvement in their foundation and understanding of global health, and that being their focus, but doing huge amounts of work and contributing to the whole systemic or holistic approach to this pandemic. And the one that I would like to really highlight is Crocs. And as much as I think completely out of fashion, but doctors still love and need these for comfort, I do actually think that this initiative by Crocs to make sure that there's been contributions for free to the healthcare workers has, I think, a really special moment for Crocs. Would love for everyone to put in the feed if they're seeing some other great examples. These are probably the most popular organizations right now, certainly some of the most profitable, but would love if you added into the feed what you've seen maybe locally that has been hugely inspirational or within your country.
Great. That's good examples. They're not necessarily the only examples, as Karen mentioned. There's so many examples out there, and we're going to see good examples and less good examples, of course, as the crisis is moving on. I'm very curious about the Twitter 1 billion contribution to fund global COVID-19, and I would love to see more details about what they're going to do and what is going to be the social impact of such a huge amount of money. It's really leading the way if they are properly invested to the right causes, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think we're done seeing things.
Yeah, and with that, we are moving to the employees, and let's see how organizations can demonstrate their responsibility for employees, how they can support well-being for employees and their families, how they can encourage employee personnel to do professional development, because that's part of what needs to be done. And again, employees, it's extremely important stakeholder. It's important part of corporate responsibility today.
Right, and I love seeing that. And in the majority of the feed, there's a lot of emphasis on the contribution that their organization is making towards employee health and safety, wellness, and how that extends not just to the employee, but also to the employees' network, whether their families and their pets. And this is where some of those examples are used here. The most immediate response when COVID became so much of everyone's reality was the shift to working from home as if not sort of deemed an essential worker. And this work from home experience is new to a lot of organizations, some not so much. So there was a balance of what the reaction was. The transition to work from home was very easy and quick for some organizations, and others, they found it a bit tricky because their technology didn't extend that way yet, or there wasn't access to computers or technology for everyone, equitable access. So I would say the work from home experience is certainly what has been put on as the biggest pressure, but it has sort of resulted in a new style of employee engagement. And some of these are the best practices around that virtual office culture. And what I really like here is the jellyfish example, where they are teaching the employees of Jellyfish, their parents that may not be so tech savvy. The IT department of Jellyfish is actually going that extra mile and making sure that the parents and maybe even the grandparents of their employees are technologically savvy, so that we can all get on a Zoom call and have our grandparents be there too. So I found that to be really special.
Karen explained in a great way what could be some great examples of good practices on corporate responsibility towards employees' well-being. One of these practices is the personal development. A lot of employees, they expect that the companies are going to spend more resources to their personal development during COVID-19, and are going to invest more in the online education, because online education is the new thing today. We believe, and we have seen from a lot of companies, that they're moving towards online education faster than ever before in the history, because digital it's the new thing.
As we all know, online education, online experiences are really what's transitioning organizations the most.
Great. We are so happy because in CSC 4 years ago we created the Sustainability Academy, Sustainability Academy is right now the leading source of educating sustainability professionals with certified online courses. It's the leading platform, and we have several Fortune 500 companies that they trust Sustainability Academy, and they educate their managers and staff through the courses like the online diploma on corporate sustainability, the certificate on sustainability reporting, the certificate on carbon reduction strategy, ESG performance, social return on investment, and several other very unique specialized certified courses. This is the time for those that they really want to be leaders to educate their employees, because that's also the expectations of their staff and their managers, to get more education as part of their personal development journey. And with that, let's move on to one of the last slides for tonight, opportunities for looking ahead to the new reality. So how the new reality looks like. Let's take a look here. We're going to have automation of multiple operations resulting in reduction of damage of the environment. That's the positive things. And a lot of business, they need to change their business model. We're going to have reduction of unnecessary work traveling. That is going to help the reduction of carbon footprint, but also operational costs. We're going to have increasing procurement from local suppliers. Adoption of remote working programs in almost all sectors. I mean, we had remote working in services sector, but now it's going to move all away in all different sectors. And finally, we're going to see switching activities to web services and online solutions. These are some of the changes that is going to happen, and all these changes are going to be permanent changes for the next coming years. What is your thought, Karen, on that?
Yeah, I think after seeing all of the quotes and comments in the feed, I think we should probably add one more, and that was to be have leadership turn to being more purpose-led, finding their purpose for their organization, just given the experiences that they've learned with how to mobilize their employees quickly, let alone respond to the consumers. So I think the other new reality is a even greater shift than we have just previously seen towards purpose-led organizations.
Great. So we're moving to the end of this webinar. Let's summarizing. So what can companies do? So the first act is acting with responsibility towards society. Offer support with hospital equipment needs, online support for healthcare workers and medical personnel. Offer support to population and groups in special need of assistance, and offer free products and services to their clients. About acting responsibly towards employees, they can consider initiatives for wellness of employees and their families. Families, it's part of the stakeholder groups because they represent the employees, and continued personnel and professional development. These are some of ideas that we discussed during this webinar. And we hope we have been able to show you a holistic perspective about corporate responsibility and provide you some fruitful ideas about how you and your companies could react more appropriately during this crisis, but also after the crisis. As Winston Churchill said many years ago after World War II, we should never let a good crisis go to waste. I can translate this quote to the businesses today. This is a great opportunity to reconsider the existing business model and create new ones that are going to be more appropriate fit for the next coming years. It seems challenging, it seems difficult, but welcome to the new reality. And Karen, your input here as well is well appreciated.
I was just going to jump in with this reminder of a hero globally, but it's I've said it earlier, but the sustainability mindset, the socially responsible mindset, is certainly going to be, I think, highly utilized as people think through their plans and their organizational's future, having this witnessed and participated in this experience.
Great. Last thing before we present you the self-assessment online tool we have is that CSC was always offering remote digital consulting services for the last 4 or 5 years. So crisis is not changing the business model of CSC. We'll be happy to introduce you the remote tools and custom-made online tools we have created the last years to help our clients in doing materiality assessment, gap analysis on ESG areas, sustainability reporting, and sustainability report external assurance. All these tools are appropriate with you. All the online services are really, really very, very unique and advanced, and even sometimes much better of being there and offering services with a site visit. Finally, as I promised, this is the tool that we have created for you. It's a brief online assessment tool to help you and understand how ready you are for the next day after the COVID-19 crisis. This tool has been designed for sustainability managers who are working for medium and large organizations. And if you want to have access to this tool, do send us an email to marketing@csc-net.org, and we'll be happy to provide you more information with that. I know we are at the end of this webinar, and I would like to thank you all for your participation, for your comments. I would like to thank the CSC team, and especially George and Helen, for supporting us in creating the slides, in identify trends, big part of this discussion, but also Karen for her active contribution during this discussion. And I will be glad to provide you more information. Do send us an email if you need more information about the online courses of Sustainability Academy or any other information you may need, and we'll be happy to share that with you. Karen, any last thoughts before we say have a nice day?
No, I just want to acknowledge everyone for taking the time to be on with us today. It has been a very special moment to be able to share this and to hear from you directly. So thank you very, very much.
So have a nice day. For those of you, you are from New York City, from Chicago, from LA, from Seattle, from Georgia, from several states that you join us today, from Toronto, from Vancouver, from New Zealand, from Brazil, from Kuwait, from all over the globe. Thank you for joining us, and have a great sustainable journey during the pandemic, but also after the pandemic. So have a nice day.